Bulldogs have been one of the dominant teams in the late 80s, early 90s and are once again in the grand final where the Black Diamond Cup, the oldest Aussie rules football trophy still played for in Australia, is up for grabs. But the Bay will have their work cut out. Wallsend defeated Warners Bay in both minor round matches, with Warners Bay turning the tables in the major semi-final. But one of the big factors in the game will be the lack of matches played by the Bay. Because of a draw earlier in the final series, Warners Bay haven't played for 3 weeks. Wallsend and Warners Bay also meet in the reserve grade grand final. Singleton team in the competition this year, finishing 6 points ahead of tomorrow's opponent Wanderers, and deserve the title of favourites.
They've had a great season. They've played very well right throughout the season. The only thing with Singleton that does worry me is that they only played 1 game in the last 4 weeks.
Singleton are still smarting over last year's thumping by Maitland in the grand final and will be hell-bent on victory. Standing between them and glory is a determined Wanderers team, and their campaign may centre around the brilliant Stuart Pinkerton.
Depending on Stuart's fitness, I think that's got a lot to do with how Wanderers will go. The other thing I think Wanderers have to do is shut Steve Merrick down. If both those factors come, it could be a very tight game.
They may be the partially forgotten men of Newcastle Rugby League, a team that finished second on the competition ladder at the end of the minor round. But that suits the players.
It's all based around first grade, and that's what every player likes to play, and that's why the team follow the first grade more than the reserve grade. But when you seem to take a back seat, you don't have the pressure on you, and you just keep rolling along, and here we are, one more game to the grand final.
Steve Fulmer is one of the unsung heroes of the young club, and at the time when he should be rewarded for his services to the Knights, an injury to his back which affects his right leg has the bullet on the sidelines. Even at 80% fitness, Fulmer will strip and sit on the bench. For the Knights, it's a star-studded backline behind a great pack that will be the catalyst for victory. All players have had first-grade experience and will be hoping for tries like these.
And scores a sensational try, Jamie Ainscough. He made it.
Last week, the Knights were hammered by North Sydney, their renowned defence falling apart, and they will have to rectify that to beat the Tigers.
You can't miss tackles and expect other guys to make them for you. Last week we missed a few tackles and they scored. We dropped a couple of balls and they scored, so it's really a mistake-free game, finals football, and hopefully we'll be mistake-free on Sunday.
The policeman's name won't be released until all family members have been notified. He was one of more than a dozen Central Coast Police who mustered at the entrance station this morning for a 3-day tour of the Lower Hunter and Port Stephens. On entry fees and sponsorships alone, the group had raised more than $4,000 for the John Hunter Hospital's Ronald McDonald House. Waved off by Wyong Shire President Tony Sheridan, the cyclists skirted Tuggerah Lake before taking to the freeway and the steep hills of the Gap Road outside Freeman's Waterhole. The group had spread out on their way to Cessnock after lunching at Heaton Lookout. It was then that one of the men pulled to the side of the road and collapsed. Passing truck driver Ross Taylor offered what help he could.
I just thought I did what was right.
What was that?
Just started trying to do CPR for him.
And you kept that up until the ambulance arrived?
Yeah, myself and a couple of other people, yeah. We just kept going.
The man was airlifted to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital but was pronounced dead on arrival. The rest of the group, informed of the tragedy, abandoned the ride. Andrew Lobb reporting for NBN News.
And force to be reckoned with. Included in the side are 2 Olympians, a host of talented younger players, and a Dutch import whose record suggests he uses class. 19-year-old Martin Hiedemaker hails from Holland, a member of the Dutch junior national squad, and in his first hit-out with his new teammates on Tamworth's artificial surface, looked the goods and will fit in very well to the team structure. It promises to be the strongest side fielded by the Frogs, and there is an air of confidence building within the camp. Tamworth plays its first National Hockey League matches against the Brisbane Blades on the October long weekend, coinciding with the annual carnival, and the crowd is certain to be substantial owing to the NHL matches. Barry Pritchard has once again accepted the arduous task of coach and will be hoping the side settles quickly into a playing pattern. $1.50 and $1.40, $1.70 and $8 even. The Quinella $6.40 and the Trifecta $111.60. The Falcons needed to create history by becoming the first team to win the Doomsday Double, but it was all over by quarter time as Adelaide blasted away to a 16-point lead. It was a dreadful start for the Falcons and it didn't improve, as the 36ers had a 25-point mortgage on the match by the long break, and it was even worse at three-quarter time, behind by a massive 29 points. Mercifully, the match and the season's aspirations were all over shortly after, beaten by 19 points, and now the Falcons must look to next year to address yet another losing season. On a happier note at Garden City, the final of the Buttercup Challenge proved to be a windfall for Mayfield Christian School. For the past few months, more than 100 schools from across the valley have shot, thrown and dribbled their way through an elimination series, with goal setting and nutrition talks being a part of the program. Today, Knights players Robbie joined members of the BHP Breakers and the Fosters Falcons in competition against the schools who made the finals. And it was Mayfield Christian School who shone through, now $4,000 richer, with New Lambton Primary and Tenambit sharing the runners-up purse of $3,000.
More than 50 people turned up this morning for the occasion. The Forestry Commission supplied a variety of trees, including red gums and casuarinas. They'll line the banks of Tamworth's Peel River. Members of Rotary Tamworth's Lions Club and local school children got their hands dirty to improve the look of the city. Another 500 trees will be planted in a couple of months. It's hoped this project will be as successful as another tree planting program which was undertaken 7 years ago. These trees show just what can be done. Jane Anderson, NBN News. Members of the RAF's Williamtown base provided an escort as veterans of 3 wars marched through the streets of Bowraville in the Nambucca Valley. They'd seen action in either Vietnam, Korea or the Southeast Asian confrontation. Retired Major General Ross Buchanan was the guest of honour. The Salvation Army performed a dedication service and a plaque was placed beside the town's World War I and II memorials. The festival was launched in Armidale's Beardy Street Mall this morning.
To celebrate young people's skills in the arts field, to give them an opportunity to develop further skills and just to experience some activities they may not have been able to do otherwise.
Entertainment was provided by a number of groups, including the Armidale City Band, street theatre performances by students from Tenterfield High School and the Aboriginal Youth Club dancers.
Right, across the northwest region there's a series of workshops and other activities. One of the highlights is a series of theatre skills workshops that are happening in 7 centres right across the northwest region.
Young people in the Armidale area will be able to take part in a theatre workshop, a masterclass for woodwind and brass players and mural painting and poetry competitions. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Singleton did all the attacking in the early stages, aided by a howling wind at their backs. Mark Carlisle posted the first. More points came from the boot of the 5/8, Merrick slipping him a ball, and Carlisle was right on target. Chasing their first flag, the Bulls surged forward and received a penalty for a high tackle. A quick tap and they were over the line. With the conversion, Singleton led 13-0 at the break, but Wanderers hit back. 2 penalty goals really made the grand final an open affair, and it got even closer. The pack started a roll, and all of a sudden Wanderers were in. But Singleton were able to hang on and claim their first title.
It takes practice, preparation and presentation to reach this level of dance. Some manage the moves early, others waltz through a lifetime polishing their acts. Under 10s to over 50s will be taking to the dance floor of Newcastle's West Leagues Club until 8 tonight. Gypsy taps, Pride of Erin's, waltzes and jive steps watched by the judges. The pastime is currently the subject of an Aussie movie, Strictly Ballroom. It takes a light-hearted look at the struggles behind the smiles and the seriousness of competition.
Very serious. Very, very serious.
Romance wins through in the movie. How about in real life? Does that exist or is it strictly competition?
Yeah, you've got to look competition. My fiance is actually out in the audience, so it's just for show for the judges and for the audience. You've got to make it look like a love dance.
Cameron McKellar has just returned from a 6-month tour of Europe. He won a Nuffield scholarship to study agriculture overseas. Now he's putting what he learnt into practice. Instead of the traditional wheat, oats, barley and sorghum, Cameron is planting a range of grains and herbs, including faba beans, chickpeas, cumin and coriander. He believes this is what the market wants.
I've got very little wheat in this year, the reason being that I'm trying to get away from streamlined commodities and try and get hold of these, what people like to call niche markets.
Not only are they proving reasonable export crops, but they're also helping to put nitrogen back into the soil. Cameron believes we have the world's most efficient farmers, but marketing the product is the key to success. That is, knowing what happens after the product leaves the farm gate.
A lot of farmers will forget about it as soon as it goes out the farm gate. They think that's their job done. But what we have to be doing is following that right through the whole marketing phase till it gets to the consumer. And we've got to supply what the consumer wants. And we've got to look to doing that properly.
Cameron says there are many avenues waiting to be tapped by Australian farmers, such as the European market for medicinal herbs. There's also the need for essential oils, that is, growing, say, parsley, mint and tarragon, and extracting the oil for sale.
For the uniqueness of some of these crops and the marketing opportunities that are available, we've got to be looking at different crops.
As well as grain, legumes and broadacre herbs and spices, Cameron also looked at aquaculture on his trip. The drought has left this 28-hectare dam empty, but when it's full, Cameron believes it could offer him a golden opportunity. As well as an irrigation supply, the dam could be filled with fish. Silver perch, in fact.
It seemed crazy to have that volume of water there with nothing growing in it when we're not using it. So that's why I studied the fish farming in Scotland, Italy and the UK. Obviously there are different types of fish. I was looking at salmon and trout and sea bass, but the particular fish that I'd be interested in is silver perch. And with the growth rates, the marketing possibilities, I think it's a goer.
Cameron has many ideas, some which may remain just that, but others he's keen to put into practice. After all, he believes no one ever did well without having a go. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
A simple ceremony at Katara High School this morning as member for Upper Hunter George Torres rallied regional support for the Sydney Olympic bid.
We need to be sure that this country is entirely behind the Sydney Olympic bid. Otherwise, without domestic support, the strength of the expression of sharing the spirit won't transmit itself into those Olympic delegate votes.
The Hunter is ideally placed to benefit from a Sydney Olympics. Opportunities exist for regional centres to provide training and warm-up facilities for legions of international athletes. And of course, the varied attractions of the Hunter could expect to attract their share of an anticipated 1.5 million Olympic visitors. The choice of a high school for today's ceremony was especially significant. Mr. Sura says school children will be asked to play an important role in the Sydney 2000 bid.
We're asking school students to sign a letter which we're hoping will attract 1 million signatures as a very strong expression of support.
Senior students will have left school by the year 2000. The bid committee hopes they'll choose to be part of an army of more than 100,000 volunteers needed to help out at an Olympic event. Some may even be contestants. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Ian and Erica Puller live between Uralla and Armidale in one of the area's earliest homesteads. Brambletie Farm is also home to Australia's largest herd of low-lying cattle. They're an Angus breed, but are much smaller than normal. This bull weighs 400 kilograms. That's half the size of a regular bull.
Normally when you have photographs taken of adult bulls and the owners or the grooms are standing beside them, all you'll get is a photograph of the heads of the people looking over the back line of the bull. But in our case, as you see, I stand up, and I'm not a very tall fellow, it's really my waistline you're looking at above the back line of the bull.
There are 70 head in the herd, 16 are calves. It's important the young are well built and meet all the specifications of the Australian Lowline Association. That is, cows no taller than 100 centimetres, bulls no larger than 110 centimetres. This young bull is what the association is after. In Australia, there are 15 growers. Ian and Erica have been breeding the cattle since 1989. They have just a few hundred hectares. In an area where they could run 6 normal cows, they can run 10 low-line. By breeding and crossbreeding, Ian believes they'll soon have a sizable herd ready to market.
Realistically, probably 4 or 5 years away from making, well, even then, not a major penetration into the Australian beef market, clearly, but certainly satisfying the needs of exclusive butcher shops in Canberra and Sydney.
It's not only the smaller cut of beef which Ian and Erica are hoping to market, but also the temperament of these animals. John Jackson breaks in the bulls, 3 20-minute sessions, and these animals are amazingly placid.
In China, for instance, even with a herd of ducks, there's a man looking after that herd. Those ducks follow him around all day. Now, Australian cattle normally won't do that, but these sort of animals lend themselves to that form of handling.
Ian admits that breeding these animals is breaking new ground, and he's learning all the time. By making the animals smaller, the physical makeup also changes.
We've found that they are critical in their cycling weight. They won't cycle till they're 220 k's, or 220 kilograms, which means that they're fairly safe to manage until that age, because if you have a bull with them, he won't mount them because they simply haven't cycled. When they do start to cycle, they cycle at intervals between 16 and 18 days. Now, normally a cow will cycle at intervals of 21.
The gestation period is also 12 days less than the average cow.
If you can get a faster turnaround in your breeding cycles and produce more beef, albeit small stuff, well, clearly that's an advantage to the industry.
Ian has had to overcome a lot of scepticism surrounding the low-line breed, but he believes that's now a thing of the past.
I have a lot of friends locally who are what I'd call very large cattle breeders, and they're intrigued with what we're doing.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Club officials were cleaning up today after vandals broke into a greenhouse and cut up about 200 young trees. The damage bill, $1,500, months of work wasted in developing the plants.
We had a group of 10 volunteers in this morning, and they're very angry men, very angry.
Tempers are wearing thin as this is not an isolated incident. The club has been plagued with problems over the last 2 months.
3 greens have been ripped up by vandals, some have been flooded with water. Trees have been stripped of their branches. Club officials are nervous after this latest raid, as it appears a machete was used to slice up the plants.
There is concern if implements like that are carried around the course when we have workmen on the course in the early hours of the morning. Yes, there is great concern there.
All staff have been put on alert and security rounds have been increased. Police are investigating. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
12 months ago, he was struggling to get out of reserve grade. Last night, Matthew Rodwell was honoured as the league's hottest new property.
A year ago, I didn't think I'd ever be in this position, winning a couple of awards and playing most of the year, all of the year in first grade. It's been nothing short of a great year for me.
Indeed it was. Rodwell was instrumental in the night's semi-final surge. In 24 games, he and captain Michael Hagan provided a potent partnership. His kicking game gave Newcastle more options in attack.
Rodwell sticks it up in the air. In actual fact, the reverse kick, and he's got it!
Rodwell received a $5,000 investment portfolio from Norwich. Last week, league writers voted him the Winfield Cup's best discovery. But success has come at a price. An economics degree has gone by the wayside. Matthew's looking down the barrel of some heavy-duty off-season study.
I'm probably a bit behind, but I've got holidays to catch up in the next couple of weeks, so I'll be doing uni work throughout the holidays.
And his tip for the showdown between Saints and Brisbane?
Brisbane, but I have my doubts. People go back to the '69 grand final, I think, when Souths and Balmain, and Souths were the short-priced favourites, and Balmain beat them, so you've got to be wary of that, but I think Brisbane will get up.
Right off, 4 wheels off in the grass, gradually coming up the camber. It's quite...
Delegates from 7 countries, including Switzerland, France and Japan, spent the day touring wineries which make up the Orlando Wyndham Consortium. It consists of several hunter and interstate wine companies. The visit is an attempt to display our local winemaking procedures, from the grape through to bottling, new releases and, of course, the opportunity to taste them.
We have to have plans, we have to be in a position that growth is sustainable, and this is one of the ways of doing it.
Australia now holds 2% of the world export market, representing an annual income of $250 million. Orlando Wyndham is Australia's largest exporter, with its sales growing from $1 to $60 million since the mid-1980s. And Mr Hay expects the trend to continue, and not just for the Orlando Wyndham Group.
We're seeing an enormous explosion in interest in Australian wines. 3 years ago, you'd have to really look around the shelves to see if you could find Australian wines. Today, they are there, they're on the shelves in ever-increasing numbers.
But to ensure the growth rate is sustained, enabling the domestic economy to reap the benefits, Mr Hay believes there should be a united export push from all Australian wineries. The delegates will travel to Adelaide tomorrow to participate in an Australian wine conference and tour the Barossa Valley. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The Mount Royal Management Area lies beside the Barrington Tops north of Singleton. Under the EIS, the Forestry Commission suggests about 70% of the 7,000 hectare site should be suitable for long-term timber production. That is, logging should be maintained as it has for the last 60 years.
There are a few people that don't want any areas logged at all. We're trying to be responsible with our management, but also provide timber needs to people of New South Wales.
But the Wilderness Society says it's an environmental sellout.
They're intending to log World Heritage significant forests, and we don't want to see them do that. We're going to see what we can do to stop them.
The Forestry Commission says any reductions in logging would mean job losses. Roads and trails into the bush could not be maintained, and funding for land management and nature conservation would also be cut back. The EIS is on display for 8 weeks at Forestry Commission offices and local councils. Public comment has been welcomed. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Charles Ledingham is one of the larger landholders around Moree in the state's northwest. Marinda is the smaller of his two properties, thousands of hectares of prime crop-growing land. It's been said that Charles Ledingham is one of the Northwest's most innovative farmers, but Charles disagrees. He says the key to success is just doing things better. And doing it better is what Charles and his two sons do best. Long-term sustainability is their ultimate aim. While profit is important, it's never sacrificed for the quality of the product. The soil is their livelihood, and Charles is a firm advocate for reduced tillage practices. That is, using and turning the soil less to maintain its structure.
I look forward to seeing a field that is ready for the next planting, that has a high quantity of residue matter still on it from the previous crop. So we do feel strongly about changing farming practices, and we believe now that we're this far down the track that we are making minimum till and no-till practices work economically for us.
This is the first time this paddock has been tilled in 2 years, and it's reaping the benefits. Instead of machinery and chemicals to control the weeds, Charles prefers to use a woolly herbicide, 3,000 sheep. Charles believes it's important for all farmers to use similar practices.
I think it's very important that all farmers look at long-term production sustainability, that they adopt farming practices that either halt or, very importantly, slow down the degradation process.
Charles Ledingham is very much market-driven, but again he questions the effect this has on a property.
Advisors are saying, farmers, you need to be more market-driven. But you should not forget agronomic needs. So we feel very strongly about making sure that the best farming practices are adopted on our land.
It's important farmers of today know their market and the forces acting upon it. Charles sees his skills in agronomy, not bookkeeping. So detailed records of Marinda and its cash flow are kept by the farm's full-time secretary, Vanessa.
It is so important to keep your office procedures going right up to date, so someone's got to be doing them, and I'd suggest that perhaps farmers should look at sharing secretarial services.
Charles does not profess to have all the answers and says he's always learning, mostly from other farmers. However, his views do differ from some of his colleagues. For example, Charles is not among those who believe Australian farmers are being unfairly treated by the US government and the subsidies it's given its wheat farmers.
I do find it hard to be critical. I think we farmers just have to accept the challenge that we've got to be better at what we're doing, and look more to Asia, Southeast Asia, to place our commodities.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.